I'm currently a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. I'm what they call a chief digital officer. It's a fairly new job description. It's not just IT, but how do we look at strategy in the out years. And I've spent 18 years in the Air Force as a cyber HR officer. What you're going to see today is basically years of work that we've done to leverage technology. And it's really hard for those of you that have been part of or know anybody from the military. It's been really hard to do that because of the bureaucracy and some of the politics that are involved. But what I'm going to share with you today is basically our story. I work for an agency called the Air Reserve Personnel Center. We've been around since 1954. And the Air Reserve Personnel Center was created basically right after the Second World War. All of our airmen in the Air Force were, once they separated from the Air Force, nobody knew where they were. And as we got into the Cold War, and most importantly, the Vietnam War, we found that we couldn't reach back and find folks that had served, because by law, even though folks retired from the Air Force, they're still basically on our rolls if we want to do a total recall. And so the Air Reserve Personnel Center was created basically as your HR office from the sky, and everybody was managed through this HR office out of Denver, Colorado. And one of the things that I learned immediately after joining this organization back in 2009 was how technology was always something that we considered part of our business structure. And when we relate to other areas of the military, that's somewhat not so true when it comes to HR, pay issues that we do for our customers. What I'm sharing with you is the last 8 years of work that my team and I did in the Air Force, and we're still in the middle of a project called Total Force Service Center, and it's basically taking 58 geographically separated HR and pay offices and merging them into 2. So there's one in Denver and there's one in San Antonio, Texas. And I want to start off with, I want to be able to leave with you some key concepts. I never grew up as a IT guy. I didn't go to school as an IT guy. I was always I went to college at Oregon State University as a liberal arts major, but it wasn't until probably my 6th year in the Air Force that I started embracing the IT side of the house. And I think one of the things that I've learned was it's truly a belief. If you have a belief in innovation, if you believe in technology, that helps you. I work with a lot of fellow smarter than me kind of IT folks, but if they don't necessarily believe in it, they just do it because it's something that they want to get paid to do. It's hard to get through some of the strategy. So what I'm going to share with you is some of the strategy that we use, and then I'm going to share with you towards the end a project that we just launched to the Pentagon this afternoon that you would think after 7 years of deployment of smartphone apps we would have by now, but unfortunately we're just now scratching the surface. So I'll go ahead and go through the slide deck. What I'd like for everyone to do is just sit back, follow the journey. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation. There are a ton of concepts and ideas. I want to just also say one thing. The private sector does everything that I'm about to share with you extremely well. They're very agile. They're very versatile. Since the federal government is a nonprofit organization, it sometimes takes a little bit longer for us to kind of figure out what path we want to go down. So what would normally take maybe a year or 2 for a project, it's taken us almost 15 years. So let me just take you to the next slide. What you have in front of you is what I call my infographic. It's going to be this presentation today that I'll share with you. I'm going to break it apart in pieces, and at the end of this presentation, I'll send Mr. Hensel the link so he can share with everybody this particular infographic. It's one sheet. You kind of can learn from it. We partnered with the United States Air Force Academy and the Colorado Technical University folks out of Colorado Springs. Their PhD students are dissecting this with us, trying to write their dissertation around how do we evolve technology in the federal space. So as I blow through the next slide, again, this is my organization I work for. It's the Air Reserve Personnel Center out of Denver, Colorado. We're 6 generations of serving airmen. And when I say airmen, we mean those folks that not just fly the airplanes that you see on that screen, but actually support it. If you look at an Air Force base, it's just like a small city. It has basically all the ingredients of a city. It has a mayor, it has a medical facility, it has finance people, a fire station, everything that you can consider in a city we have on an Air Force base is self-contained. Our job is in my career, is to make sure that we have the right technology, that we study our generations of airmen. There's currently 4 generations in the workforce, and I think most of us understand, the millennials in the room, there's a much different way of behavior around technology with our millennials, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But since 1954, my organization has always touched technology. One of the first things that we purchased in 1954 was what we called an RCA 501 mega computer. I think our iPhones probably triple its capacity, but at the time in 1954, it was the most technological advanced data warehouse west of the Mississippi. It managed airmen and all their pay issues globally, and that kind of set the stage for us at the Air Reserve Personnel Center to continue to look at technology and innovation. In 2009, when I was called back in, I separated from the Air Force and came back in. The Air Force Reserve called me and said, hey, we're working on a new project. And in 2009, the Air Force decided to, as I shared earlier, take 8 HR offices and pay offices and merge them into 2. And at the time, we didn't have things like an 800 number, which is kind of shocking because phones have been around forever. We didn't have a URL or a web portal that both service centers from San Antonio and Denver could share and use and share with their customers. So in 2009, I was asked to come back in from corporate America and help build the Total Force Service Center. What this slide, the purpose of this slide is to show you basically when I came on board in 2009, 80% of our interaction with our customers was in person. People had to literally walk up to a counter, take a ticket, grab a ticket, and wait a day or 2 before they can get seen. Some of the bases that were larger, such as Nellis Air Force Base out of Las Vegas, I would tell my customers to come back within 2 or 3 days. And that was inappropriate because, you know, a lot of these customers needed help right then and there. Our goal was to evolve into our telephony. We call it the telephony tier 1, tier 2. Again, the telephone had been around for a while, so I was a bit shocked that the Air Force hadn't really leveraged the telephone to service customers. So in 2009, we created a single 1-800 number for all of our almost 3 million customers across the services, across the Air Force. And then in 2011, which I'll share with you today, we immediately decided to start building interface through the web. Now, the web had been around for a while, but once again, we needed to take advantage of technology in front of us. At this time, when I came in 2009, smartphone technology and smartphone apps had only been around a year. The iTunes Store was initially launched with their first apps in summer of 2008. So there was a lot of discussion around, let's talk about web first. And we weren't even scratching the surface on app technology at that time. But what I'm sharing with you is over time in the last 5 years, for the last 8 years, we looked at what do we need to do to improve technology and how do we need to adjust the way that we use technology to reach our customers. And what you see in front of you is today's environment in the Air Force. A number of our customers go through what we call self-service. So many of you have used self-service, whether you knew it to be called that or not. It's typically called Tier 0. So when you go through your app and you bank through your app on your phone and you don't talk to an agent and you do all your transactions through a self-service app, that's in the industry called Tier 0. All of the technology known today powers Tier 0. It's very, very high-end. It's very intuitive. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the advanced analytics that goes on with Tier 0. So we had 4 goals set in 2009 when I first came back to develop this new future of using technology for servicing our airmen. That's goal 1. In other words, when I use the word personnel, that's an Air Force term for human resources. Personnel includes pay as well. So when you see the words throughout the presentation, personnel, I'm really talking about human resources and pay. And in this goal, we wanted to redesign an integrated standardized system. Goal 2, we wanted to integrate into a secure information technology-based platform to deliver services across the globe. We have almost 1 million customers that I service out of Denver, another 350,000 out of San Antonio, and that doesn't include the dependents, so spouses, children, and even after members pass away, we still service and support their families. So there's a lot of people that we support from our service centers in Denver and in San Antonio. Goal 3, when I talk about A1, that's the Pentagon's term for the Air Force HR and pay arena of our business. And what we're saying here in Goal 3 is that we want to basically deliver services across all levels. There's, just like a business, the Air Force has many, many different levels. It's so big. We have folks from the ground level at the wings, at the bases, all the way to the Pentagon, and there's a lot of folks that are working together to help people get their money and have their HR data updated daily. So goal 3 was to make sure that all areas of our business talk to each other. So from a strategic perspective, that was very difficult, because you just imagine trying to get herding cats, trying to get everyone in the Air Force to talk on the same topic and agree on the same topic. Goal 4, as that pops up on your screen, is to ensure our airmen are prepared to use these modernized services. Again, if I were to pull us back in time, in 2009, we really just had the phone, barely. We didn't have an 800 number, so folks had to just find the number and call for help. We really didn't utilize the web as well as we are today. And the idea of using applications on a smartphone was not even part of our discussion. Our goal 4 was written so that we would look out to the future to see what best-in-breed technology was used by both private sector and federal agencies. Let me pull this out real quick. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. This next slide is basically our next step. When we decided we wanted to create a better interface with our customers across the globe, we had to look at our Air Force mission systems. And Mr. Hensel talked about the over 168 plus systems that the Air Force has. We still are dealing with that. My purpose of showing this to you, this was the original enterprise architecture around our systems that we had in 2009. It hasn't changed much today because some of the bureaucracy and politics that are going on behind the fence line. The bottom line is we have a ton of systems dating back from 1960s to 2015 now. And what's scary as an enterprise architect and as a chief digital officer is all these systems are disparate. They're not touching each other. They don't talk to each other. Over time, because technology increased very rapidly in the 90s and in the 2000s, a lot of the leadership at the time thought, hey, that's cool, shiny, and new, let's go buy it, and then realized, well, we can't really use it and put it on the shelf. That's not an Air Force problem, that's across all services. And today what we're trying to do is create a better enterprise architecture. So before we go out and buy stuff, we need to make sure what are we buying and how are we going to use it. During the establishment of reviewing this enterprise architecture, we created a governance structure where we had a board of directors. And the next slide shows you what we spent time doing is creating an org structure. And at the time, I was a major, and I was asked to come back in the Air Force as one of 4 TFSC, Total Force Service Center Capability Team Leads. What does that mean for you in this audience? One day when you are asked to do something more than just plugging something in the wall or seeing if the server works, there's a lot of strategy discussion involved. What I was asked to do, along with the three gentlemen you see there on the screen in the middle, was not only do I need to rely on my technical experts, the developers, the folks that write code, but also the folks that actually maintain and my servers. I had to learn the business very quickly with them to build a strategy for the future. And what Mr. Berger, Mr. Schick, and Mr. Thomas and I did was very quickly understand the intricacies of IT. It is an ever fast-paced industry. It's always been fast-paced, but it's even more fast-paced now because of the cybersecurity and some of the issues that you see on the news today. So our goal in this governance structure was to always lead by understanding what was outside, what was going on in industry, and learning best-in-breed technology within the government and outside the government. The whole purpose of that was so that we can build the next steps in developing better innovation for our airmen. Immediately we decided we needed to partner with some key experts in the field, so we hired a consulting firm, large consulting firm, Booz Allen Hamilton. They were hired to be our strategic partners to tell us, hey, you're going too fast, going too slow, or you're not looking at the right things. We also partnered with Oracle. At the time, they were a software company. Today, they're a cloud servicing company. And there are other companies like them that probably do things probably better than they do. But at the time, we felt that that was the best in breed for us to lean on. They had offered a lot of technology that other companies could not offer at that time. So we partnered with Oracle and Booz Allen Hamilton, and we decided to create a timeline. So from 2009 to 2011, we gave ourselves an aggressive time, the entire face of our HR IT systems in the Air Force. Keep in mind, before that, projects took 10 to 15 years, and you can only tell if those of you in the room have served, you'll know that we almost got thrown out of the room by saying, hey, we're going to do it in 24 months. We were aggressive, and the way that we implemented our project or this product was by looking at the 6 key areas of our projects. I'm going to pause here and talk about IT. I have seen a change in the last 20 years with IT. It started off as just knowing where the wires are, understanding different servers and how they're connected. I will tell you from my experience and working with counterparts out of Silicon Valley, IT has become such a strategy-involved environment. You have to understand project management. You have to understand profit lines. You have to understand where the company that you're working for is going, because your competitors are doing the same thing, and sometimes they're doing it better and faster. So when we were building our project and our critical path to succeeding with this project, it was hard for us because we had never done this before. We weren't trained to do these things in the Air Force. We're trained to fly airplanes, drop bombs, and protect the country. So it was a different way of doing our business. I paused and share that because I've seen a huge change in the private sector as well. And Booz Allen Hamilton helped us understand, and Oracle helped us understand that you're not just trying to do a project, you're trying to not just finish this project, but link it to things that you want to do in the future. And it has to be open-ended enough where you can succeed, and then also look at high-end technology that probably not even around yet that you need to be able to connect and fuse into your current platform. The 6 silos that you see there, we called our 6-cylinder engine at that time. We needed to make sure that by May of 2011, that was our project end date, that we needed to have all 6 of those cylinders firing, that all 6 cylinders, all 6 projects within all 6 areas of the project were done and effectively tested by the end of May of 2011. I'll go through what these are. KM is knowledge management. What is that? When you go to Amazon, you have a question, or if you go to your bank and you have a question, there's always knowledge, there's always content, frequently asked questions. Prior to this project, the Air Force did not give that to their airmen. If airmen had questions, they had to figure it out by themselves or go on Google and look things up. The second silo is the DISA deck. That's a federated, and I blew it out there at the bottom so you know what DISA means. It's basically a federated, maintained data center. And at that time, that was our only option We have since moved away from a federated data center. In other words, we don't want to rely on a federated system. We want to rely on a high-end commercial system, which we're now in. But in 11, that's what we had available to us, so we work towards that goal. Web services is what it is. We wanted to build a better website for our airmen. Today it's called MyPERS, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But at the time, we didn't have any web services. We just had several websites that were built by different folks across the command. We didn't have one place for all of our customers to go to. Our next cylinder was called agent skilling. It's when you call an 800 number, or you ask, or you talk to someone on a chat, and they're providing you service. So a good example of that is like Dish or any type of a Comcast. You want someone who's knowledgeable that can answer your questions, and if they're not, then you have to make sure that they're skilled. So one of our projects was agent skilling, to make sure that we had the right agents on the floor, which went to the next cylinder, which is agent training. We had to make sure that we had the right training materials. So we're now even breaching away from IT-centric stuff. We had to make sure that the IT worked, but also that all the soft skills required work for those agents. And then the last cylinder was what we called COOP. It's continuity of operations. If one service center, if one agency goes down, if there's a natural disaster, or if the server goes down, we need to make sure that there's a secondary server or secondary agency that can support our customers. All 6 areas needed to be completed in time for us to provide better services to our airmen. This next slide is where we are today. The Oracle team is now considered a cloud computing company. They have several clouds that they offer customers. What we use is their Oracle Service Cloud. And this picture basically shows us that the Oracle Service Cloud is a high-end interactive customer service environment. Again, if you've banked through online or used an app to bank, they use the same platform. Oracle Service Cloud or service clouds like this operate in the same manner. There are several different cloud platforms in the industry today. There's one called Infrastructure as a Service. It's more of like the base level version of cloud servicing. Then you have Platform as a Service, which is the next best version, where you have a little bit more capability. And then the high-end version of that, of cloud service, is Software as a Service. And Software as a Service is really what your Amazons, your Googles, you name it, Overstock.com, Best Buys, a lot of these big companies that have very intuitive interfaces that maybe you've used, use Software as a Service cloud technology. So the Air Force is now in that environment as of this past year, and it's hidden from the customer, but their experience is they don't get the wheel of death when they try to click on something, or they actually get real answers real time versus something that doesn't make any sense or relevance at that moment. Why do we do this? Because of those airmen that you see right there on the screen. That's the Air Force Thunderbird team. They're a demonstration team out of Vegas. And the entire team used to be all regular Air Force team members. Now it's a total force team, we call it. We have reservists, we have guardsmen on the team. And that's an example of the rest of the Air Force. The Air Force has grown to become a very mixed group of individuals because of cuts in budget and technology. We rely on technology to take care of each other. So we wanted to make sure that we built a robust system so that every single one of those airmen that you see in front of that airplane get the same type of customer experience treatment that they deserve. One of the things that I've noticed up front was an airman would call in 2009 and ask a question, and then the same question would be posed to another agent, and you'll get 2 different answers. And we had to fix that. So all these projects helped to get us to a single reliable set of answers and technology to support those customers that you saw on the previous slide. This next slide talks about business value gained. It is something that is more from a business perspective, obviously, but it touches IT, because what we need to do is always consider why did we spend all this time and money developing and training and making things work? I want to bring you to the slide below. That slide talks about we wanted to make sure that there was bottom line value for our customers. And not just our customers, but for the smart IT folks like you in the room who were being pressed to fix and build and modify and fine-tune systems and redevelop and develop interfaces. You know, a lot of our airmen that are smart in this arena, I didn't want them to walk away asking, well, why did I do all that hard work? It didn't give anything to the customer. It was just a waste of time. So what we had to do is make sure that we identify what business values we wanted to achieve. And one was knowledge. We wanted to make sure our customers had knowledge. Our customers felt like they were being valued by the services that we were giving them. And also that our federal strategic partners, such as Booz Allen, and we felt we wanted to make sure that or in the future making sure that our airmen felt before they went on a deployment that their needs were met so that they didn't have to worry about pay and HR issues while they were gone. So this next slide is more of a behavioral science review. Again, it's not something that the Air Force has really taught any of us to do, but we took advantage of learning from private sector. Many of you may or may not have seen this curve. It's called the law of diffusion of innovation, and it's used typically in marketing. And I'm going to walk through how we used it in the Air Force. The law of diffusion of innovation puts customers or users or agents, anybody that touches a system or a new product in categories. And typically your innovators are people who invent things. They're the ones that innovate, they create things new, they don't have to be told what to do, they just do it. That's typically 2.5% of your population. Your early adopters, that's about 13.5% of the population. Those are people who don't need to really be told, again, they don't invent it, they just go buy it. When the new iPhone came out in 2007, you had a bunch of early adopters lined up to buy a product that no one really knew whether it worked, whether it was something worth buying. And then you have your early majority and late majority, which is most of the population that are out there. It's about 70% of the population where 68% of the population where folks wait for early adopters to make a decision. A good example is folks that, hey, you know what, I'm not going to buy that new Apple Watch because I'm just going to see what my friend who always buys things first thinks of it. I trust him. I trust his ideas. So if he likes it, I like it. That's, in essence, how the early and late majority behave. And then the laggards, those are folks that just don't want to move. They just, they'd buy a rotary phone if they still made them. Those are the kind of folks that really just want to just sit back and use whatever technology is available to them. I call this out because this is important, again, in the IT arena. A lot of developers and a lot of smart technical folks have a hard time connecting the dots when it comes to strategy, and even strategists have a hard time connecting the dots as well. What we had to do in the Air Force was understand where did our customers fall in this continuum. How many folks did we have in the early adopters? How many folks did we have in the innovator pile? It was important to us because when we were launching new systems, most people, if they weren't comfortable with it, didn't adopt it, didn't like it. So we had to make sure that it was easy to use, that the interface was intuitive, that it worked. So that's where, again, we relied on the smart IT folks to make sure that the wires were connected, that the servers were running, that all the hardware was the right hardware. And this behavioral study has helped us push Oracle to build better user experience design around our products. Before, we didn't have it. You had user experience design that looked like something from 1985 or 1990, and folks didn't want to touch it. So we wanted to make sure that we studied our behavior of our generations of airmen. The last thing I want to point out on this slide is on the top left corner. We dissected our 4 generations of airmen that work for us. As you can see, those are the different generations, years born. Next to the description of the generation, in parentheses, from a research paper done by Gartner, there was a research a study done around technology, and inherently what you see in the parentheses is how each of the different generations interact with technology. Now, there are outliers. I know of a millennial who does not touch technology, and I know of a baby boomer who touches technology more than a millennial that I know. So there are outliers, but why is it so important for us to understand this is because, once again, today, if you look at the behavior of baby boomers, they are increasingly touching technology faster than they have before because their kids, their grandkids, their friends are touching technology faster than we have before. And what that means to me as a digital officer is that technology is growing faster than it has before. So that means technical folks, developers, need to be as agile and as technically savvy with what's coming out next. So it's an ecosystem. It used to be the guys and the gals that know how to build computers from their home. That's what they did, and no one really cared. Today, it's an ecosystem, and as a strategist, that's something that I always look for to evolving our technology, especially in the federal government. So evolution, what do we evolve to? Today, we evolved into what we call our My Purse website. The Air Force and the DoD use MyPay for finance. MyPay is a very, it's not as evolved as it should be yet, but My Purse was the product of the 2-year project that I shared with you earlier. When an airman today enters a website, they use what we call a common access card, which is like a credit card with their photo on it. It has a microchip. They stick it into a computer. The moment they stick that card into the computer, that's my screen, my data that you can see in front of you. They get their rank, their name. They have all the options that's available to them. Whereas in the past, when I would go onto a website from the Air Force, I had 100 data points that didn't mean anything to me. When we developed this project, we wanted to make sure that the interface that we gave our airmen was very personal. It was just relevant to them. So if someone else clicked on their website, it would only have data just for them. This is my data, and it was a step forward, or a huge step forward for us. What we're working on today is leveraging how to incorporate MyPay into this My Purse environment. So we have one site on the web, and it's not called My Purse or MyPay. It's just an Air Force. Airmen can go in there someday and touch everything, and it's all faster. Again, with some of the politics and bureaucracy, we're finding that, again, another challenge that we're living through. That's the new My Purse site we deployed as of 2011. As of today, we're now into the cloud service environment. It's housed by Carpathia, which is a company owned by Oracle. If you've ever visited a data center, and just quick show of hands, how many of you have visited a data center or even have stepped foot in some kind of data center? I'm just curious. Anybody?
Yeah, 3 people out of 26.
Okay, so I'll tell you, data centers are kind of like a whole nother world. It is so high-end and so over-the-top secure. If you ever have a chance to ever step in and visit one, I would recommend you do it, because it's not just the cool servers that are sitting inside, but it's the way they protect the perimeter. Let me talk about Carpathia. Carpathia is owned by Oracle, like I said. It's out of Dulles, Virginia, and they hire ex-Navy SEALs to infiltrate random times throughout the week, month, day, and they try to have these Navy SEALs see if they can go across the fence, infiltrate the perimeter, and then they also have infrared scanners. You get locked in the building if you can't get out, even if you want to get out. There's all kinds of different high-end security features just in that data center. I visited that data center last year. There are many high-end banks like Bank of America and some other banks that utilize portions of that data center, Best Buy, Kohl's. A lot of different companies are in that location. The reason why I bring that up is because it's no longer just a, hey, let's fill a room full of servers and walk away and lock the door. It's become such its own little self-contained environment, self-contained city, because of all the issues going on with cyber and all the intricacies with competition. Data centers and cloud services has been such a huge business, and as you grow and understand where you want to take yourselves in your career, I got to tell you, that's a whole nother area of IT that's blowing a lot of people's minds. We're in that cloud services, and one of the things that we've started building recently is a smartphone app. And so this is some of the new things that we're working on. This is a presentation I just gave to the Pentagon today. I've been working on smartphone apps for the past 2 years. The Air Force does not teach us how to write coding for apps. I self-taught using Xcode, which is an Apple-based coding system. Sat there for a couple days, tried to figure out how to use it, and then started deploying test apps in the environment. What we ended up doing, my staff, there's 3 of us. We have an office called Skunkworks out of Denver. It's a new office that we've only had for about 1.5 years. And our job is to basically do all those cool things and leverage technology, leverage with industry. So what you have in that bullet is all of our partners that we've connected with over the past 1.5 years. Some of these are private sector companies. Some of these are agencies from the federal space. One example that I want to talk about, I'm always really proud about sharing this company, is Good Technologies. They are a cyber app company. They've only been around a few years. They were actually acquired by BlackBerry this past 2 weeks, and they basically create high-end apps that are secure. The NSA, the FBI use them. The Air Force now uses them, and they've helped me create a new app for the Air Force, which I'll share with you here on the next slide. This is kind of our journey. So this next slide is a concept that we picked up from private sector. It's an acronym called SMACIT, and it's basically comprised of your social media, your mobile, your analytics, cloud, and Internet of Things. And I want to just kind of bring this down to bare bones. Everything that you do when you purchase something online, or everything you do with your, like I said, your bank or any high-end app that you play around with, is modeled from SMACIT. Social media, combining that with all those other letters, all those other systems and interfaces, is what you have. So what we're doing today is we're building our Air Force app, single point for all of our airmen to go to, with the MyPay, with the MyPERS, with all of their HR and financial needs. We've built an app for just that purpose. What you see in front of you is an app that I built with my colleague last year. It's an informational app for one of our units in the Air Force. It's deployed already in iTunes, so we went through the stringent review through iTunes. But it's nothing cool and sexy. It's just, hey, here's a bunch of data you can have. It just showed proof of concept to the Air Force that if a couple guys that are not trained to do coding can figure it out, then a lot of the folks in the room that are smarter than me probably can do it much, much better. So we deployed this to show proof of concept to the Pentagon. They told me 6 months ago, all right, if you can do it, build me another app. The next app that I'm going to show you is what we built that I demoed this morning. To the right of the screen is the new app. It's a single app called the Air Force app, and it has basically everything that an airman would want to do in their life. Go to school, deploy, that's the readiness tile, finance, all their financial needs going through that app, career, if they have questions about going to school, getting promoted, everything is interfaced on this app. You see that photo there? That photo is actually a photo from my common access card, and my rank tells you my job title is, my ribbon rack. All this information is being pulled from several data warehouses securely through Good Technologies, so nobody can hack this. It's what we call derived credentials, and let me explain a little bit of what that means. I talked about a common access card with a chip and how we stick it in today so folks can see their data on a website. With derived credentials, I no longer need my airmen to do that. They can bring their own iPhone, their own Android, their own Kindle, their own BlackBerry. We wrote the coding so it can touch every device that's out on the market today. And they don't need to have a CAC card reader. They just basically do a 2-3 factor authentication the first time. I'm looking at biometrics, eye scanning, facial recognition, thumbprint, I mean, even voice recognition capabilities. And once they do that the first time, they can do it every single time without having to put in their common access card like they do today. Once they're securely in an app on their personal device. It's not an issued device from the Air Force. Nothing stays on their phone, so there's no data that someone can steal. It's all being driven through the secure interface from a data warehouse from Virginia. And once they shut down the app, all that data disappears because it's never resident in their phone in the first place. What this does for me is it changes the game. I no longer care about my website as much because I know mobile devices are very personable. They're personal in nature. People take care of their phones. People want only apps that they like. And if this is an app that is used for their life in the Air Force, they're going to go to it whenever they need it. Whenever something happens, they'll be able to interact. So the phone calls are shortened. The phone calls are not as frequent. They can call us if they need to talk to us. They can still email us. They can still chat with us. But 99.9% of the stuff that they need to do, we've built around the app itself. This is not something that you can see today. Most services are trying to get there with us. But in the last 6 months, we've deployed a beta test. We've been able to do some great things with our partnerships with the private sector and most importantly with the Pentagon. So that's the new release. You're the second crew that I've briefed this to, and what I'm excited about is it gives my airmen that quick response to find data. I want to share one quick war story. I went out to LinkedIn. I don't know how many LinkedIn folks are in the room, but if you use LinkedIn, you can go ahead and find me on there. But I met with the CEO of LinkedIn last month and spent an entire day with his user experience lab. And I got to tell you, it's so cool. They study behavior of their customers. And the one thing that the senior vice president of user experience design taught me was you need to design your app so you can manipulate everything through your thumb, with your thumb. If you start asking folks to touch it with other parts of their hand, you've just lost them. Everything needs to be managed from their thumb, because when people are walking to their car, when they're at a party, they're always touching the phone with their thumb. Everything has to be intuitive, easy to touch. That's called user experience design. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this app is make sure the tiles are big enough that you can touch it and not mistakenly touch another tile, that it's intuitive, it can be all done with your thumb. Again, that's something that the Air Force has not taught us to do. It's just something that we've learned with our partnership. We like this because it's breaking the glass and it's sharing, keeping pace with our digital customers, and most importantly, keeping pace with what's already out there in industry. So that's our app. Our goal is to have this done by, we're in the middle of testing. We'll be done with testing by the end of December, and we'll launch this app to our almost 2.5–3 million customers by January. That's our goal. So before I launch away from that, I want to just open up any other questions, or any questions at all, whether it's on these slides or just in general around technology or where the federal space is going. Any thoughts or questions or comments?
No questions at all?
I had a question.
Okay, question on the end. Go ahead.
Yes. What is like the personnel allocation towards cyber warfare, specifically dealing with that sort of threat?
You were cutting out. Repeat the question.
What is the personnel allocation for cyber warfare and that sort of things, and do you deal with that at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I will share what I can share, and because I can't go too deep on that topic. I will tell you that the personnel allocation, I'm assuming you mean by how many folks do we have supporting cyber warfare? Is that what the nature of your question is?
Here I'm just speaking from like a general public information here. I hear in the news all the time about how you're constantly under threat about that, and I wonder if that's like a main prerogative of.
Well, I will tell you what's scary about cyber warfare is that without giving you the numbers, in terms of personnel, is that there's so many folks that are not just going around playing with how to be a hacker today. And in the past, that's what folks used to do, right? Hack, see if I can break into some server, and then just kind of cruise around. There's a lot more realistic expectations that cyber hackers are doing. I mean, you've heard about the Ashley Madison hack. Over the weekend, there was a hack even with Apple's Xcode by China. It's more than just hacking. They're stealing and taking information and using it for ransom at times. So I will tell you, not just in the federal space, but in private sector, I think it's still there's a lot of folks that are still trying to define what really that means when we say cyber hack, because the definition has changed dramatically. And when you finally define what it is, well, who is the right person, group of people that know how to find those things or follow those potential hacks or hackers as they or before they occur? And what I mean by that with my answer is it's a whole new battlefront that I don't think we were really aware of that was going on for many, many years. And it's just now really hit, not even at its pinnacle yet. I think it's just now become newsworthy because it's affecting people's lives. And the government as well as private sector, I can't know what the right number is. I met with the CTO from HP 3 months ago, and he's freaking out because he doesn't know what the right number is, even in HP, of how many folks he needs to have to defend the cyber side of what they do for a living. If you ask me this question a year from now, I'll probably have a completely different answer because there's so many things that are going on today around this topic.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you. A lot of these folks are trying to get into the IT field or trying to get new skills with the IT field. Can you speak to what type of skills you see out there when you visit companies like LinkedIn, HP, about what type of skills that these employers are looking for?
Question. Let me talk about a couple companies real quick. I always like to break the ice. kind of take it to this next level. So let me talk about Y Media Labs. They're listed on this slide. Y Media Labs is a company that actually writes apps, smartphone apps for Apple. And the owner, I think he's 33, started the company, made some stupid app called the birthday cake app back in 2008, and found himself building apps for banks and now big companies like American Express and iTunes. Another company, Oracle, I've talked about. LinkedIn, I've talked about. When I met with these companies in Silicon Valley last month, I learned a couple interesting things. They do want smart people who understand development, code. They do want that. That's a skill that once you have it, no one can steal that away from you. But what I found with these companies, especially in Silicon Valley, is they really want people who understand the strategy around business, project management, like I stated earlier, and being influential in their space. And what I mean by that is I found it shocking that when I visited LinkedIn was parked right in the same campus with Facebook and Google. What I found out from all three companies when I visited that campus was they all share they share stuff. You'd think they wouldn't share anything, but they actually share a lot of their strategy, they share a lot of their development, and there's a lot of crosstalk that goes on. And I thought that was interesting. And to answer your question, Jerry, what I found from the CEOs was they always want people who not only know how to do the technical, but that can play very well with others, that can be the spokesman of the company, but also break down barriers and share success stories across businesses. And it was such a soft skill that I didn't think was so apparent in the industry, but apparently it is. And the answer I got from the CEO of LinkedIn was, well, if we don't do that, we're all going to fail. They look at their industry in Silicon Valley as one big ship, and they're all living on that ship, and they have to help each other out. Even though they're competing at times, they have to rely on each other because employees move back and forth from one company or another. So one of the skills that I picked up from these CEOs was not only should you be savvy and technical smarts and high-end technical best-in-breed stuff, so to speak, you also need to be very, very personable and be influential from a strategic perspective and understand where your company is going, where do you want to go with the company, and how can you connect with others in the industry so you're not fighting all the time, you're actually sharing. The companies that do that well are the ones that you know about today, the Facebook, the Googles, the Amazons, the LinkedIn's, the Oracles. All these companies do that well, the Apples. The ones that don't do it well don't survive.
Okay.
I don't know if that helped that, or if that answered your question.
Do anybody have any other questions at all? It's a good opportunity to ask questions because when you get a chance to talk to someone, you met the CEO of LinkedIn and HP. Yeah, another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder what the average airman perspective on this sort of thing. Are they using it as like a social media kind of thing, or is it more of I feel like you don't want to use it kind of thing?
So did you hear that, Mike?
Yeah, but I can barely hear it.
Okay,
so go ahead and repeat the question.
He was asking, what's the take by the airmen on this whole process of introducing new technology, such as the app that you've developed? And
oh yeah,
yeah,
that's a great.
Is that
yeah, that's a great
question.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will tell you that older generation folks in the Air Force, they don't typically get it right away. They just don't. And the ones that do get it are my millennials and my Gen Xers. They get it. They want to spend time doing things on the web. They want to do things definitely on their smartphone. They want to find ways to get things solved so they can do it themselves and be the expert at it versus walking up to the building, asking for help from someone else. I mean, that's the behavior of my airmen right now. They want to have that self-service and utilize technology because they do it in their lives already. It's my senior officers that they tend to shy away from it because they say we're not ready for it, but yet they're already doing it in their own personal lives. So I would say the generalization of my airmen is they want it, they're ready for it, but I have to make it intuitive. I have to make it easy to use because the next generation of airmen is coming in. They're my I generation folks, and those are kids born after year 2000. And my son is an I generation kid, and he does more around technology than I ever thought he would. So I need to be able to prepare my IT professionals in the Air Force to understand that behavior. I think we're ready for it. I know the airmen are ready for it. If they weren't, they would be like, we're happy with phone calls and we're happy with walking into a building. But my airmen today want to have that self-service on their smartphone.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and that question. Yes.
Well, you can ask because you
okay. Go ahead.
So the question that I have, being that it took 15 years later for them to get on this page, and being that he doesn't know how many bodies that's needed as far as protecting with the cyber thing, how do you overcome that barrier of selling to, because I work for the Department of Veteran Affairs.
Okay.
Anything they hear iCloud or whatever is like, no, not even having that discussion. So how does he break down that barrier to moving forward so it won't be another 15 years before catching up?
So Mike, if you don't heard that question, so he was talking about the example that you mentioned about it's taken 15 years to get to this point. And the question, the person that asked the question is a student that works for Veterans Affairs here in Orlando. And he has experience where they won't allow him to use like iCloud at his job. So how do you get, how do you break down the barrier of people actually using this technology, especially in the armed services?
Yeah, I will tell you, I've been fired 15 times in the Air Force. because I don't ask for permission, I just do it. And I will tell you, it's kind of awesome because what are they going to do, make me an Air Force officer? I'm already that. And it's tough. It's not easy. I fortunately have been able to partner with some high-level officers and senior executives from the Pentagon. And that's just, here's a funny story. Let me just answer that question this way. For 15 years, I've always wanted to do what I'm doing today and was told no. No, you can't do it. Well, why? We're not ready for it. We don't want it. Have a nice day. I just finally started building stuff. My first app, my first cloud environment, you fill in the blank. And when folks became my advocates and influencers from areas of position, that's when those naysayers, they basically shut the you-know-what up. They just had no place to even give their opinion. It's taken me 15 years to get there. But fortunately, it's only taken me a year to get to where I'm at today with, this is one of 18 projects I've just shared with you. The smartphone project is one of 18 projects that I manage. And all of those projects are things that are way beyond even some of what private sector is doing today. I'm sharing that because it tells me that when I finally was able to break the code, I'm getting there faster now than I ever had gone before. And it's because there are people in position now who are the right people who are listening, who are allowing us, my team and I, to do these great things. How does that extend to other areas of the federal government? The Department of Health agency I'm visiting with on Thursday. There's other federal agencies that have called me already and asked, hey, I've heard about how you've been able to break the code in the federal Air Force space. Help us figure it out for our space. And it's been kind of cool. I'm waiting for the VA to call me. I've reached out to them several times, but as you look at that slide there on the screen, you'll see some agencies that are not private sector agencies that have reached out to me and said, wow, you need to help us figure this out because the time is exactly right. I mean, the cement is wet all over again. My lesson learned was if you believe in it and you want to do it, just do it. And if you're afraid about getting fired, Steve Jobs was fired. So many other people at his level were fired in their lives, and they still were able to make things happen. I've always believed in technology. I've always believed in innovation, and I'm a risk taker. I break rules all the time, and fortunately, this time it worked. And I will tell you that it does take a team. You got to trust. You have to have advocates and influencers on your side. I would suspect that if this continues on, we will get there and we won't have to repeat a 15-year project or wait another 20 years for some cool stuff to happen. It's not the Air Force norm, but the government's changing as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, no, go ahead.
Is he going to try to, like what he's doing for the Air Force, is he going to try to do it for the other branches too?
Okay, so the question, Mike, was what you've explained today was based on just the branch of the U.S. Air Force. Are you going to extend this out to the other branches?
Yeah, in fact, I have a conference tomorrow with all of the other services. I meet with the other services every week on smart mobile device, and the NSA and FBI are also on our call, but the other services are not anywhere near what I just showed you, even in the design. So the Air Force Secretary asked me to brief this tomorrow to all the other services. I've been on the phone with them for months, but I haven't shared I didn't want them to see my secret sauce until I was fully ready. But I am planning to brief this to all the other services, the Navy, the Army, the Marines, the Coast Guard. And I want to be able to help them build their interface for their customers. Because at this point, nobody's given us the template. We had to build our own template. So to answer your question, yeah, that was my biggest goal, is to make sure that I can build something that was scalable and repeatable, not just for the Air Force, not just for the DoD, but for other federal agencies.
Yeah, go ahead, another question. Yeah.
With the introduction of the smart app, like you said before, 10, 15 years ago. When you guys introduced a telephone number and a web page, it drastically changed how you guys handle customer service and the entire business. How do you believe that this smart app, the smart app, will be more technologically savvy or change the Air Force?
Okay, so I don't know if you heard that, Mike. The question was, 10, 15 years ago, the Air Force was using telephones to support customer service, and now today you've developed this app to reach your customers. How will this impact, I guess, the Air Force over time?
Yeah, over time, like 5 years.
Like 5 years, 10 years. How will this change in the future?
Yeah, I like that question. I'll give you a war story first, and then I'll answer that question for the out years piece. War story was in 2004, my wife was deployed to Iraq for 6 months, and we didn't have anything like this. We didn't have a website. She had to go to a building physically to get help before she deployed, and she deployed on Christmas Eve. And I'll tell you, it kind of sucked because our kids couldn't see her because she was busy trying to go to appointments to get things done. And what I see we achieved so far was we've eliminated that face-to-face requirement where now people can go to a website and get things done, which means more time with the family before they deploy, which is a good thing. I like that. I wish I had that at that time. This app even takes that to the next step, even higher, where they can do everything literally as they're playing ball with their kids at the park because they're going to deploy in 6 days. They can do everything self-service. They can do everything no matter what time of day, where they're at, and spend quality time with the family, which I didn't get to do when my wife left. So I took this as a very personal project that I didn't want someone to have to go through what I went through in 2004, where I didn't see my wife for 4 or 5 weeks, and then all of a sudden she had to go for a deployment for 6 months. And I want to give back time to my airmen. I want them to be able to do things where they don't have to go to a building, where they don't have to pick up a phone. They can do things on their own because people do things throughout the day on their mobile device. For the out years, I see that we evolve this where it becomes even more high-end, where I tell people what is going on in their Air Force life. Hey, Michael Ortiz, you're going to retire in two years. Here are things you need to get done before 24 months. Today, we don't do that. An airman will retire after 20 years of service, and there's still a lot of things that they don't get in terms of benefits and entitlements because there's just a lot of things that they should be doing before they retire. And I want to be able to start pushing things actively to that airman through an app that says, hey, guess what? You're going to retire in 2 years. Did you know you should be doing this for your VA benefits? You should be doing the following so that you got the right coverage when you retire. We don't do that today. So we have a lot of veterans who get out, who don't get the right coverage, who don't have the right benefits and entitlements, and they're trying to backtrack time, and it's kind of sad. So my goal with this app is so that when my airmen or my soldiers or sailors or Marines wake up in the morning, they get a ping, just like they do with their email, just like they do with Facebook, just like they do with LinkedIn, and it tells them, hey, did you know you have 20 years, you have 6 years of service, and here are some cool things you can do in the Marines or the Air Force or the Navy. We don't do that right now. And there's so much stuff that we can give our military folks, and not just military, our federal employees. You can even apply this to folks in academia. How can we utilize this kind of interface for folks within the university system? So, to answer your question, I see that if we continue to design this the right way, it's part of their life. And it's something that they get told, here's some opportunities versus them finding out through a friend or through Google what benefits and entitlements they're due.
We have a couple of questions here. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, sir. My name's Ryan Drew, and I was actually separated from the Air Force back in April here. And one of the things that my airmen that were under me were always frustrated about was these are young airmen, the rate at which these applications were changing. So some of them were good, some of them were bad, but like you were mentioning, the Air Force would see a shiny thing and just buy it.
Yeah.
So my question is how, from a big IT standpoint, how do you sort of ensure that what you're working on specifically isn't going to be the next shiny thing that looks cool, but now there's no support for it a year later. It was a thing that I really liked and could have worked, but you just kind of dropped it. Like how do you avoid that from the sort of the bigger standpoint?
Yeah, so what I just put on the screen was a presentation I gave to the SAF CIO in June. And it's called my Dream Big presentation, and it answers your exact question. What I did was I asked the Air Force CIO if there was an enterprise architecture for my world, everything I just talked about today, right? HR, pay. And the answer was no. So my leadership said, hey, Michael, why don't you draw what you think the enterprise architecture should look like? And the reason why I wanted to draw this was because we don't have one. That's why we buy all those cool shiny things and don't know what to do with it. So when I built this, and I'll just go ahead and break it down to the actual enterprise architecture so you'll see the blowout. But to answer your question, and I like this question a lot because this was my problem with the Air Force, is that we didn't spend the time studying what we had or where we were going. So what I drew was this reference architecture in front of you. And there's a lot of stuff going on here, a lot of stuff. But what I want you to take away from this slide is that there is no enterprise architecture that existed before this diagram was created in May of 2015. The Air Force would just buy stuff and then put it on the shelf. The one thing I want you to draw your attention to is in that middle section where it has the letters A through F. That's the Air Force HR management life cycle. So everything from recruiting, that's acquisition, recruiting someone in the Air Force, all the way through letter F, which is pay, compensation. That's basically what I do for a living for HR and pay. And every time the Air Force saw some cool new system or saw some shiny new thing, they would buy it and they wouldn't ask themselves, where does it fit in that life cycle, right? So you're an Air Force veteran. You lived through this life cycle. You're A through E and F. You've separated, so I transitioned you out. You were sustained, meaning I took care of you with assignments. I utilized you by sending you to school. I developed you by giving you different levels of training for upgrade training. And I acquired you by recruiting. And throughout that whole process, I'm paying you. The Air Force has never used this drawing to keep in mind what should we keep, what should we buy, what should we not buy. So when we created this slide, the Air Force CIO saw this and said, wow, we need to, from now on, we can't buy anything unless it fits this enterprise architecture. I spent a lot of time since May when I drew this and submitted and briefed this to the Secretary of the Air Force CIO. I've spent literally 2 weeks out of every month visiting the Pentagon and helping the SAF CIO understand how we should always keep this in front of our view. So we don't buy stuff we don't need, or we don't just recreate the wheel over and over again. I hope you appreciate what I'm sharing with you because I said the same thing. I was just like you, like, why are we buying all this stuff? I just bought something else and I don't even know how to use it. Well, we had to draw it. And what we found in the military, not just the Air Force, is that a thing called reference architectures or enterprise architectures don't necessarily exist. They do, they're out there, but they're not, we don't understand them as well as we should. So what we've been doing now is taking this model and making sure that we don't overinvest or oversaturate our airmen with so many things that they probably don't even want to touch. That's why when we designed the mobile app that you saw on the previous slide, my feedback to the Air Force was we need one app, because the Air Force said we probably need like several apps, one for each MAGCOM, one for each command. Response was no, you want one Air Force app. Why give our airmen 20 different apps? Makes no sense. It took them 6 months to agree, yeah, you're right, one app is fine. But it's the behavior, it's the challenges, and that's why answering Mr. Hensel's questions about, you know, what is industry looking for, it's just that not only understanding technical, but understanding strategic and behavioral issues around projects. Because that'll it'll make or break your case. So to close with your question, I hope and pray that the Air Force does not lose sight on this reference architecture, because if we do, we'll be back with that customer experience that you just talked about, where we're buying a bunch of stuff that we don't need, and our airmen are asking ourselves, why are we looking at a new system? I hope that answered your question.
Yes. Was there another question? You want?
No, I just have a feeling that you might meet my dad at the Pentagon with his project to expand to the other branches.
He mentioned that you might meet his dad at the Pentagon because he works on some of these projects. Is that correct?
He's the senior technical advisor to the director of Army Architecture Integration. So.
Okay, you need to come up and tell him that. 'Cause I have no idea what you just said. He's going to come up to the camera and just talking to let you know what he said. Yeah, just speak. I can hear you like real close.
My dad is Chief Warrant Officer Ralph Walton, and he's the senior technical advisor of AAIC.
Okay.
The Army Architecture Integration Cell. So.
Yeah, I know what that is. Absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if I ran into that team tomorrow in this discussion we're having, because it's a joint team. It's all the services.
Okay. Question? Yes.
Well, I'm willing to give him this idea.
All right.
Because I can't make money on it.
One of the students that says he's willing to give you this idea, but you have to pay a lot of money for it. No, go ahead.
So, will he make, because just looking at especially this design, the one thing that I noticed in the VA, maybe he can figure out, he have some of the smarter people that's around him that's doing the algorithm. Is it possible, because like a lot of these vets, when they come, they've been that transition from being discharged,
yes,
whatever. They're asking all these questions, not knowing, oh, I was eligible for this, or oh, I can go to school for this, because I think the culture, I'm not a vet, the culture in any of the branches is they really don't share information.
Yeah.
So can him and his team actually build maybe a portion where there's an algorithm, like this gentleman, like David's in the Air Force, and he's coming up to his 6th year where he's eligible to have free schooling for the next 4 years, where it'll automatically, hey, did you know, something of that nature.
So it was interesting, Mike. You were talking about when you visited the Silicon Valley, and I was surprised at this too when you mentioned it, that a lot of the companies shared knowledge, right, between them.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in the Air Force, based on one of your previous slides, the Air Force components, or even in general, they don't talk to each other, right? So the question is, the gentleman once again works at the VA, and he was talking about how some people come through and they're not aware of information about services that they actually are eligible for. So I think mentioned that you would be pinging information to users through the app, but that's what basically he was working on or asking about. Is that going to come to the forefront, let's say, for example, the VA?
Yeah, there's an algorithm where, like a person is coming to their 18th year and saying, hey, you're eligible to do this. If you go into the service, you can buy some time back. You can just like pretty much information like that.
Sure.
Right. So if you remember when I mentioned I want to be able to push data to my airmen in the out years, I want to be able to, they get push data that says, hey, you know what, you have 2 years left from retirement, here's some things that you should be aware of. That's exactly what I meant. So I've partnered with an agency by the name of DMDC, and if you haven't heard of them, I didn't even know about them until about a year or two ago. They house all the data and they link with the VA. They share the same data as the VA. And they're out of Monterey, California, so I went and visited them a month ago, and I started partnering with them because I said, I want your data. Because the government, not just the Air Force, we have a lot of data. It's called big data. We have a lot of information about everyone and everything, but we don't do anything with it. So my architecture around this reference architecture that you see in front of you was to DMDC and to the VA rep from DMDC was, how do I make sure I can get the right data so I can solve what you just said? So if someone's retiring, they know immediately what benefits and entitlements that they are due, not just from the Air Force, but from any other federal agency that it's offered from. That's why I'm visiting with the Defense Health Agency on Thursday, because they called me out of the blue and asked me, how can I help them get to where I'm at with the Air Force? Because they want to start linking. What I want to close with this is that because my general who I work for believed in all of the people I pissed off, believed in that I want to take a risk and make things happen, we've been able to now make a mark and tell not just the Air Force but the federal space that we've got to all talk, that there's some ideas that maybe I have an idea, it may not be the best idea, but let's start somewhere. This reference architecture you see on the screen is that topic that I'm referring to. This is an architecture that I designed that's not just for the Air Force. It's for every federal agency and DoD agency. And my goal is to be able to get partners across the board so we all can share and influence each other, because unlike Silicon Valley, even within the Air Force we don't talk. And the Air Force guy in the room knows what I'm talking about. We don't even talk within the Air Force. Now, how much more from other services? I don't even want to talk to the other services. But when you visit business and the private sector, especially businesses that do extremely well, they constantly share. Larry Ellison, who started Oracle, he's in his 70s, he helped fund his biggest competitor, Salesforce. That's his biggest competitor right now. He helped build that company. He funded it. He helped build them. A good 20% of the employees from Oracle are now in Salesforce. So you would ask yourself, well, why are you helping build your competitor? Because that's the way business is. It's all about collaboration. Yeah, there's some secret sauce, and I'm not going to share with you at times. But at the end of the day, if I fail, you fail. If you fail, I fail. And that's an idea that I'm trying to invest and share within the federal space. That if I fail, the Army fails, and vice versa. And it's not normal thing. It's not something that my peers or some of my superiors like, but it's worked for me. I've never had a chance to ever brief the Secretary of the Air Force before, and that happened. And now, most importantly, I've just now got invited to brief the Department of Defense Secretary of Defense on this particular topic, because he wants to do the same thing. Secretary Carter wants to change the way that we do business in the federal space and DoD. So I think the timing's right, and what I like about what Mr. Hensel is doing with this tech club is that you're not just learning the things that a lot of my fellow students learned in college, which is, hey, take this computer science course and have a nice day. You're actually learning some soft skills in this discussion alone today that I think that are so much more valuable because the industry is looking for that. I wish I knew that 18 years ago. I would have stepped into Silicon Valley right away. But I visit there. My next visit is with Apple headquarters, and that came through a relationship. You know, they want to know how I've been able to infiltrate the federal space so I can help them do certain things within Apple. And I'm thinking, this is Apple. They've invented innovation. But it shows again that the behavior of industry is not just, are you technically savvy? Are you behaviorally, do you come to the table with some soft skills that make you and help you play with others very well?
Okay, any other questions, guys?
Yeah.
Oh, we got another question in the front here.
Does it get compensated for that kind of job he does?
All right, Mike.
Yeah.
This is a personal question.
Yeah.
Do you get compensation for what you're doing?
No, as a federal employee, I get paid the same way as another lieutenant colonel who sits on his butt all day and doesn't want to make any innovation strategy moves. I will tell you what I get out of this is I learn a lot about myself, and I learn a lot about my team, and I learn a lot about what other folks in my industry do, and that to me is rewarding. I don't get a bonus for any of this stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's great to be able to play around in the sandbox and see what happens and see how it works.
I think what Mike is saying is for everybody in here who's trying to, create a path in IT is you have to have a passion for this industry. If you don't have a passion, you're in the wrong industry, because a lot of this is you're not going to get the problem solved on the first attempt. Those people who go back for the second, third, fourth attempt and try and fix it are the people who are ultimately successful because they have a passion. They don't say, I'm going to fail. They say, I'm going to do it correctly. Does that make sense?
Right.
The other question, can you talk, I think there is another aspect, political aspect,
okay,
on the organization as well for the federal government, that's keeping, for going forward.
Okay, so the question is are there politics involved that have created barriers from you going forward with what you want to ultimately plan for the Air Force?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's always, the answer is yes. There's always politics, and my analogy to that, it really exists more. Whenever I go into the Pentagon, I see it more than anywhere else. And my only analogy to that is, here's an example. I'm on the side of the road. My engine, my fan belt on my engine just broke. So someone walks up to me from the Pentagon and says, "Hey, let me help you out with that." Puts a new fan belt in, and as they're helping me fix my car, they're loosening the bolts on my wheels. And as I drive off, thinking, "Hey, that's a great dude that helped me out. My wheels fall off." That's an analogy of the politics that I face at different levels. But I will tell you that as long as you're aware of those politics and know and kind of sense where you need to be and who you should partner with and trust and talk to, that comes over just making the mistakes you got to make. And it kind of sucks. There's days that I used to tell myself, this isn't worth it. Who am I to try to change the face of IT and where we need to take our customer experience for our airmen? But it's something I believed in, and finally was able to connect with the right people who believed in the same thing. But to answer your question, yes, politics, there's always someone who wants to unbolt my wheels in my car and see me fail. And not just me, but my team. And that keeps me edgy, that keeps me grounded. It's like when you know you have a competitor always nipping at your heels, you're always going to do the next best thing. If you don't, you're always going to just sit around and go, wow, this is good enough for me. But I like competitiveness, and I like there's a lot of naysayers, because every time we produce, and it shuts them up.
Any other questions? Okay, let's give a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There was a request that if someone sent you a request to get on LinkedIn, you would accept their invite.
Yeah, I would accept it.
Okay.
Feel free to link in with me, and if anybody has any questions about, you name it. I was a director of HR in the private sector, so I know what it's like to try to put yourself out there and be seen. It's not easy. It's not fun. You got to be a thumbprint, You got to make your thumbprint look different from the others. If you have questions regarding IT, innovation, strategy, if I don't have the answer, I'll be more than happy to share you my contacts. If you find me on LinkedIn, you'll see who I'm connected with. There's a lot of great things that are going out there. I wanted to say thank you for your time. I think that this is cool that your leaders, your folks that care about innovation and want to learn. I think that's really awesome. Hopefully you guys can take something from this discussion today and and learn from it, or at least teach me something down the road.
Hey, Mike.
If you're ever in Denver, feel free to look me up.
These slides that you have, were you saying that you're able to share this with us?
Yeah, I'm going to send you the link, Jerry.
Okay.
And I'll be able to share whatever you want from these slides. So feel free to
If you're
do what you will with
in
them.
my class, I'll post the PowerPoints in the A+ class and the Net Plus class. And if you are not in those two classes, if you're a part of the Tech Club, just email me and I'll send those to you. Okay? If you're interested in those, yes.
What do we type in on LinkedIn to find them?
Okay, the question was, what do we type in LinkedIn to find you?
If you just type in Lieutenant Colonel Michael Ortiz, and sometimes it's easier just to also type in Air Force at the end, you'll find me. I'm listed at, let me pull it up real quick.
Actually, I connected with you already, so I can give them that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look up Lieutenant Colonel Michael Ortiz, you'll find him. If you can't find him, contact me. I got his information. Okay.
And I'll throw this out there, this one little piece. I'm on the PBS, Public Broadcasting Systems Board of Directors, and there's a project that my team and I are working on for PBS. It's converting, because they're doing the old school spectrum, wireless, airwave kind of stuff, and we're trying to develop a new way of competing with like the Netflix and the HBO Go. So if anybody's interested in just having a discussion around that, the board of directors and myself are trying to understand what does the audience want, because my big push to them was you need to change the way you're sharing your data, your content to the audience. And I think their leadership is still old school. They still think that everyone wants to turn on a tube TV and watch it. And so there's an idea of something that if you have any ideas or some cool things to think about, I'm just throwing that out in front of the crowd because I'm always looking for advice from everyone.
There was a comment, Mike. Go ahead.
So where is it that we can be? Is it being a part of?
He wants to know where he can go to become part of this discussion.
Well, if you link in with me, I can tie you in, and we can go figure out the best way to talk about how to pull you in.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Hensel. I appreciate your time, and thanks, class.
Okay, bye, guys. Okay.
Bye-bye.